ones coming from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, are coming to fight the Taliban because they regard themselves as ethnically different. What we may be back in watching, which is a very sad reality, that once the foreigner leaves, Afghanistan once again becomes a cockpit of ethnic, tribal, and regional ambitions, as our various outside players will support different groups. So it may be a lot bloodier.
Free, this war has entangled 4 U.S. presidents. The public has wanted out for a very long time. But Biden's decision to get out and his execution are two different things. How do you think he's handled this?
I think you put it exactly right. The decision to get out is very different from the execution. The decision to get out, I think, was a brave and courageous decision to recognize that fundamentally we had failed. I mean, to put it in very simple terms, our goal was to defeat the Taliban. The Taliban over the last 10 years went from controlling about 0% of the country to about 30 to 40% of the country, measured by population. If you look at 2019, they had stopped attacking Americans because of the deal they made with the United States, which is that we would withdraw and they would stop attacking us. That was the Trump deal. But they were attacking Afghan army units ferociously. 2019 was the worst year for the Afghan army in terms of casualties ever. Worst year for Afghan civilians ever. 2018 saw 300,000 Afghan civilians displaced because of the fighting. So don't kid yourself in thinking this was, there was a calm here. It was a calm only for the Americans because the Taliban had agreed to do that. So he made a decision that we had failed in our ability to defeat the Taliban for whatever reasons. And it was 20 years on, it was time to recognize that failure. Now, how he did it is still a puzzle to me as to why there were so many mistakes made along the way. And that's one which is worth analyzing on its own.
The U.S. got into Afghanistan during the neoconservative foreign policy of George Bush, of the Bush administration. Biden alluded to that today. Here it is.
I have never been of the view that we should be sacrificing American lives to try to establish a democratic government in Afghanistan, a country that has never once in its entire history been a united country and is made up, I don't mean this in a derogatory, made up of different tribes who have never, ever, ever gotten along with one another.
Here's a question for you. Does our chaotic exit from Afghanistan show that nation building just doesn't work?
No, it shows that it's very, very hard. It shows that there are certain circumstances in which it can work, but it's awfully difficult, and it is particularly difficult for an outside force to do it. And you use the right phrase, nation building, because what the issue is not so much state building, by which I mean building the bureaucracy, it's can you bring together this country as one nation? Afghanistan, as I said, it's only had a real national cohesion in response to a foreign occupation. Otherwise, these are different tribes, they have lived different. So it's hard, and it's very hard to do when you're the outsider. This is something that, if you go back to the period of colonial occupation of all these European countries, one of the biggest difficulties they had was to recognize, the outsider can never be the agent of creating this kind of national unity, creating political order. We had extraordinary success in a few places. Germany after World War II, Japan, South Korea. But what we forgot there is in those cases, Germany and Japan were nations. They had come together hundreds, thousands of years before. Well, they were already modern in many ways. South Korea was an unusual case where they got cohesion because of the fear of an external threat. But by and large, it's been very hard. Think about all the places that the United States has intervened in the greater Middle East, in the course of this war on terror. Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia. Let's think of Syria as a partial none of them can you say the outcome has been satisfactory, right? In none of them has any kind of nation building or state building worked, because you're the outside power, and it is very hard to be the agent of change and progress in democracy. Because at the end of the day, your allies. This is what happened to Ghani and to Karzai before in Afghanistan. They get tainted by the fact that they're the Americans' favorite government or favorite elites. So they get tainted, they get delegitimized by that process. Nation building is largely a homegrown process. It is something that has to happen and take roots internally. You can help on the outside, and we have helped, but it's awfully hard.
Fareed, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
So the withdrawal deadline only days away, Tuesday. What will happen between now and then as we watch these live pictures from the Kabul airport?